and we had a really exciting game to kick off week 2. We had an onside kick and all that stuff. What a no-brainer start Josh Palmer. That was just, he was a stud. That was great. Gets that little late touchdown and saves my bacon a little bit. But welcome to Fantasy Football today, looking at 7 NFC home games, including Kirk Cousins in primetime. That was a terrible thing last year. Aaron Rodgers in primetime. That's usually a really good thing. So that's Sunday night, Monday night for Cousins, and Sunday night for Rodgers. Those are 2 of the games we'll be talking about. What about the Bucs? Tom Brady have anyone to throw to? All right, let's get to Dave and Jamie here, guys. I will say the better team did not win yesterday. Agree or disagree?
Disagree. The better team won.
But they're both really fun teams. I was thinking about this. How huge would Herbert get if he were in the NFC? Like he'd be the talk of the NFC if he was there, because in the AFC he's overshadowed by Mahomes in his own division and Josh Allen. But in the NFC, who would overshadow him?
The throw he made to DeAndre Carter it's going to be one of the best throws of the year. It was sick. But okay, maybe the Chiefs are better, but I think the Chargers were better last night. Jamie, do you agree with that?
Chargers were better last night, yes. Asante Samuel gets that interception and Herbert doesn't throw the bad one. They win the game.
Mm-hmm. Big edge in total yards, big edge in time of possession. But the Chiefs win at 27-24. We have some injuries to talk about. Obviously, Justin Herbert. The thought is that he's going to be okay. He took a big shot to the ribs in the fourth quarter. He's going to have more testing today. I'm not going to play the hypothetical game. We'll react to it when the news comes in. But they lost 2 offensive linemen, center Corey Linsley and right tackle Trey Pipkins. No idea the severity right now. Mecole Hardman also left with an injury. I guess we don't really have injuries to talk about. We just have injuries to review. So, Dave, with that being said, what are the big fantasy takeaways from this game? Chiefs 27, Chargers 24.
The biggest one might be Austin Eckler was a total dud until the final drive. And then the final drive kind of saved his day and made him close to 20 PPR points. I think he had 17 in full point scoring. And he really needed that last drive to come through. I think there are some fantasy managers that are worried about Austin Eckler and him not hitting his upside as a top 3 overall pick, but he'll get there. He'll be fine. And then the other one just on the Chargers is Mike Williams. Huge game, 10 targets, almost all of them in the first 2.5 quarters of the game. He didn't have another catch after his touchdown. What a touchdown catch.
Yeah.
I watch games with the sound off for the most part. And on that play, I was like, oh, another incomplete pass in the end zone to Mike Williams. That stinks. And then he starts to celebrate. And I'm like, what the hell? What?
Yeah.
Why do you watch games with the sound off?
I don't know. I feel like I can concentrate better. Okay. So I see them celebrating, and then I turn the sound on, and then I watch the replay, and I was like, that's got to be the best catch of Mike Williams, best touchdown catch of Mike Williams' career. It was awesome. He really stepped up. I want to see him keep this up, though. Like, he's got the potential to do this and to play like a big man receiver. Why can't it be done every week? Why was it not done in week 1? And on the final drive, I noticed, man, he didn't even get a target on that drive. He was double covered on 6 of the plays of that drive, including all 4 inside the 5. So that's why.
He actually, I feel like he did get a target. It was the one that should have been intercepted. It was like a terrible pass.
Yes, it was the worst throw Herbert had all night.
Right after his injury.
Yep.
Jamie, is there anything we can take away from the Chargers passing game without Keenan Allen? Because like Gerald, I just felt like a lot of the things that Gerald Everett was doing would usually go to Keenan Allen. It's like a lot of short stuff. Should we just kind of live in 2 different worlds, one with Keenan Allen, one without Keenan Allen? Also, let's talk 5 minutes about what you both thought about the broadcast and Herb Street and Al Michaels. Just kidding. Dave didn't listen to it. But Jamie, what do you think? Is there just we can't really take anything away from it because Allen didn't play?
I wouldn't put too much stock in it, but I mean, look, this is 2 productive games, one with Allen for a portion of it, and then one without him for Gerald Everett. So, when we're looking at this position and knowing that they had 130 plus targets to the tight ends last year as a group, and Parham is hurt right now, I think Gerald Everett's certainly going to be a weekly starter moving forward until he proves otherwise. I think in terms of, the distribution of targets, we're probably somewhere in between week 1 and week 2. And so, to Dave's point about why didn't Mike Williams do this in week 1, that's the evolution of Justin Herbert. Doesn't have to necessarily rely on one guy. What's going to happen in week 2? He was down arguably his top receiver. So he went early and often to the second guy and get him going. who was now the de facto number one. So I don't think you're going to bench Mike Williams moving forward. You shouldn't, because this is what he's capable of doing. And we saw it in stretches last year. He was just an absolute dominant force. And so he's absolutely in your lineups week in, week out. In terms of what Keenan Allen will do, he may not reach the heights of what Keenan Allen has been because there are other weapons, but I still think you're starting Keenan Allen. So it's not going to be 4 targets across the board for everybody. It's also not going to be 10 targets in a hurry-up situation because they're probably going to win more games than that to Austin Eckler. It's not going to be, feeding Mike Williams like we saw in the first half. So I think you know what you're getting with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. That'll be fine.
Do you try to sell high on Mike Williams for the next 5 days?
You can, sure. And I would say on a different topic of conversation, if Justin Herbert, we find out he has broken ribs, or something.
Yeah.
You have a chance to pick up a quarterback now. So
right. Yeah. This is like a
advantage of that
special
in your league.
situation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Right. I think if you're buying a Chargers pass catcher, you should probably wait until you get some Herbert news.
Yes.
So real quick on the
Chargers,
Chargers,
a good opportunity if Herbert's fine to buy low on Keenan Allen.
Yeah. All right. Good. And okay. Before we move on to the Chiefs, are you both cool with Eckler? Like, if you were redrafting today, would he still be a top 3 pick?
I don't think so.
I mean, I'm not going to overreact after 2 games. So yes.
All right, but we did see Sony Michel working at the goal line. Last week it was Eckler at the goal line. This week it was Michel. And a little bit of Eckler too. He was in there inside the 5-yard line in the 2-minute drill, but that was disappointing, that he didn't get those opportunities near the goal line. So, all right. Okay. Still an elite player. To the Chiefs. Not a great day for Mahomes. 21 fantasy points for him. Not that he was bad, but 21 fantasy points after 45 last week. Clyde, this team is really interesting right now. I mean, Clyde is doing a ton, but not on a lot of touches, maybe not in a sustainable way. He had a 52-yard run late in the game that really made his game. He did have 4 catches. Juju was invisible. All the wide receivers were invisible. Kelsey didn't have a great game. Maybe it was just the Chargers defense. Their secondary is loaded. Dave, do you think there will be a reliable starter on the Chiefs other than Mahomes and Kelsey? So running backs and wide receivers.
Fantasy managers that have Clyde Edwards-Helaire are gonna keep using him. He's Clyde explosives Helaire. He just some really great runs by him through the first 2 weeks of the season. You wish he had more than 12 touches in a game, but you could use him as a number 2 running back and try and ride this hot hand. Just understand that he's not going to be the main guy in this offense. They're using multiple dudes. So he's a start. And I'm telling you, when there's a matchup that comes along where it looks like they're going to face a team that plays a lot of zone, that's when you're going to want to go toward Juju. My theory was there would be more work for Valdez-Scantling in games where they played a lot of man coverage. The Chargers played 44% man against them on Thursday. Valdez-Scantling had 7 targets. He just couldn't do anything with them. I think you're going to see some impatient fantasy managers jump off of Valdez-Scantling, and I don't blame them for it. I think that that's probably a move that you can make if there's somebody on waivers that you'd rather have. Juju would be the next guy up after Edwards-Helaire, and I think he's a reliable flex, but I'm not going to call him a reliable number 2 receiver. It just depends on the matchup from week to week.
Okay. I did just want to, I think it's worth noting. With J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel, and Derwin James, this could be a very tough matchup for passing games.
And pass rush, that's going to be a problem for everybody.
Yeah. And they really...
Yeah, I rated them as one of the toughest defenses in the league coming into the year.
Yeah, so I don't know what to make of it, but I think for Clyde, Jamie, I think a lot of people are going to ring the sell high bell just because he's had 12 and 10 touches in 2 games. Should you, or should you just ride it out and accept there might be some bad games, but also he's clearly the lead running back for the team. But again, he's not guaranteed to get every high value touch. McKinnon got the 1-yard touchdown catch or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, I would say both scenarios are correct. I would say if you have him and you don't get a deal that you like, you ride it out. But I also think that if you can find somebody that you can flip him for, there are going to be a lot of frustrated people that are 0-2 and looking at Clyde Edwards-Helaire in a running back situation that they may not be happy with and say, okay, that's a package that I could put together to get Edwards-Helaire and a receiver, and you're getting an upgraded receiver, you're getting a tight end that you might like. The Mark Andrews is another bad game. If you could turn Clyde Edwards-Helaire into Mark Andrews or something like that, that's the type of move that's going to make you a much better fantasy manager. I got a question on the radio show today about, I think that exact scenario, turning Clyde Edwards-Helaire into, it was Cordell Patterson, turning Cordell Patterson into Mark Andrews. Like, there are people that panic in fantasy. You know that. So he's the perfect sell high candidate because you probably drafted him to be a 3rd running back. I just want to go back to the Chiefs receivers for a second. You can absolutely drop MVS. You might want to pick him up in a few weeks, but he's not a hold guy. Most teams play a combination of man and zone, so you're going to get some mix-up situations of, Juju having good opportunities, Juju having bad opportunities. This was just a great defense. They are going to frustrate a lot of teams. The fact that he probably didn't think Mahomes was going there, the Watson touchdown on J.C. Jackson, that's not going to happen very often to that guy. So, I think it's just a matter of, and Mahomes threw a laser, so this is what Mahomes told us, though. He said there's not going to be a guy. And so it was Watson and McKinnon catching the touchdowns, but it was him just using who was open. And so it's 2 weeks of that. It's 2 weeks of the third string tight end catching a touchdown as part of the 5 in week 1. So they're going to be guys that just step up, and they're going to be guys that get frustrated for us, or we're frustrated about them. Excuse me. So you just have to understand what you're dealing with.